My dear listeners of Radio Udan, I'm your Ajay Babuji welcoming you back to the latest episode of the Great Indian Monologue. Election month, I would rather say election months because it is actually stretching beyond a month, starting from now, today, April 19th. I just came back after casting my vote in my state, Tamil Nadu, and the elections will span till May end, I guess. June 4th is the result day. And the campaign was quite intense in my area. And in this episode of the Great Indian Monologue, I'm going to share with you my observations of how the parties have geared up for the elections and what happened in my state. Right? See, for the past 2 weeks, there were intense campaigns by almost all the big shots of all the parties, all campaigning in mind-bending heat. Actually, my state is witnessing heat wave after heat wave in the last few weeks, and unfortunately, the election window has fallen in that kind of a time slot. Even today, when I went to the polling booth at around 9:30 in the morning, I could see that the queues were broken not by people of police force or by the heat, the sun heat, because wherever we could actually find some trees. We queued up under the trees, and the rest of the space was left open. No people could stand on the hot sun. This was a scenario, and none of the election campaigners, they talked about doing something to Mother Nature, doing something good to Mother Nature. This was one of the biggest expectations I had, regardless of the parties, whether they are in power or in opposition or aspiring politicians. None of them, mark my words, none of them really cared about what we could do to the environment so we could live in a better ambience, less heat and more rain and, no drinking water problem and so on and so forth. And surprisingly or sadly, what I found as the tone of the campaign was almost all the parties were talking about the bad qualities of the opposition parties, but they were not keen to highlight what they have done. Every party has something to boast of, right? Either they have already done something or they plan to do something good. But it's mostly like a mudslinging match, like a pot calling a kettle black. It's literally that. Everybody was accusing everybody else, and a lot of complaints to Election Commission that he violated poll code, and she was insulted, and it actually went on for about 2 weeks. And even as of today, there are newspaper ads from political parties which urge voters to cast their vote to their parties. But the campaign deadline was well over. Day before yesterday evening, 6 o'clock was a deadline for the election campaign. But it looks like these rules are there only to be flouted. Right? And one good thing I have seen is a lot of people have turned up, partly because of heat, in the sense, before 10 o'clock in the morning, almost 30% of the people in my constituency, in my polling booth, they have actually voted. So out of 1,500 people in my booth, roughly about 500 plus had already cast their votes by about 9:30, 10 in the morning. And going by the crowd, I think we would look for a good turnout, which may be around 70-75%. And my dear friends, who are there in other states where the elections will be done on a relay race kind of time frame in the next weeks, please exercise your votes. This is the only tool we have to bring in reasonable change. And I actually plead with you all to take note of the candidates who offer to do something good to nature and to your environment, regardless of the party. They could be an independent candidate. They could represent a top political party which may be in power, which may not be in power. It really doesn't matter. What matters is the air we breathe, the water we drink, the soil we live, the environment. Whoever plans to make it healthy, we must vote for them. And I've seen a lot of efforts by Election Commission to bring in the first-time voters and even to ask the existing voter base to cast their vote. But the time frame, the kind of heat, and the reluctance of people to come out and exercise their vote, thinking that anyway my vote won't make any difference. These are the hindrances which the Election Commission has tried to address in a big way by encouraging voters, by making it as easy as possible. But still, I find the facilities lacking. In the sense, imagine a queue of about 100 to 200 people in a small school, in an open yard, without any cover, without any shade. Of course, there are some small tents pitched in shamianas kind of thing with some chairs lined up for elderly people and women folk to sit. But the heat is so oppressive. It gives a ominous warning that the guys are not living in a good times, and regardless of whom we are going to elect, this problem has to be addressed at once and for all. And this, I wish it really percolate down to the marrow of your bone, so we exercise our vote in a way that would influence positive changes for our environment. And my dear friends, the issue was real, the danger is present, clear and urgent. I give you an example. I read an article today, a news report in a Reuters website, which talks about big cities in China where the land keeps sinking. About 20 crore people are living in big cities where the land keeps caving in continuously below the sea level, which means any small rain will flood the whole space. The reasons they have given are few, but they are very important. One is enormous infrastructure built up on the land, the added weight of that onto the soil. And the second thing is geothermal energy. Many countries, they keep drilling huge borewells to the core of the earth under the soil to tap the heat, which is keeping one layer of rock in fluid form, the so-called magma. When you have a volcanic eruption, these molten lava, they come out from the core of earth and the volcanoes basically spew them out. You see the fury, the heat, the red color, deposits, and then they become ash and so on, rock and ash. A lot of countries are actually tapping this energy. The natural hot springs are an example of the way nature offers it, but man-made wells, geothermal wells, they are actually weakening the strata under our soil, the layers beneath our soil. So any small pressure, any added weight, it could cause a cave-in. And a lot of such incidents have been reported in China in the recent times, and an alarming report has been produced by a group of researchers from Singapore. It was released today, and it has identified a few cities which are sinking. And the same thing will happen to our cities also if we are not going to pay attention to our environment and keep on exploiting it mindlessly. And this voting franchise, the time to vote, it gives us the biggest power, the biggest tool to stop this, to mitigate this, and to bring in a positive change. So please, regardless of your likes or dislikes of your local politicians or the state government or the central government, please cast your vote. If you don't like any of them, you can use nota, none of the above, but I really don't know where it leads to, because none of the above, if all of us cast our vote into nota, I really don't know what the government will do or the election commission will do. I don't even see any provisions which handle that effectively. Would they call the election null and void and do a repolling? I really don't know, because it is not clear, it's gray, right? But at least it gives an idea to the deciding authority that people are not happy with the present electoral system, with the candidates who are in the fray, and it may bring in a change. These kind of changes are really, really painful. They don't happen overnight. They may even not happen within a generation, but the effort has to be continuous, like the way we got our independence through a struggle of 200 plus years. It is possible, change is possible, but with our sheer size, 140 crore people, of which about 90 crore are eligible to vote, the change it will happen slowly, it will be very painful, but we can do that, provided all the 90 crores of people, they cast our vote. Only then we can have a legitimate voice to crib about things going wrong and politicians not, fulfilling their wishes. Otherwise, they can announce any kind of, promises. One party may even announce to, deliver moonstone, stone from the moon freely to your household. But who cares if they don't keep up the promise? This is the way our politics has been working for the past 60, 70 years. A lot of new voters with more awareness, they are stepping into this electoral system in 2024. And I hope this election rings a clear bell. I won't even surprise if none of the parties get majority, because a lot of people are really frustrated with the local governments and the central governments with the way our environment is screwed up, our future is screwed up. And unfortunately, unlike Europe, where the school students have been agitating by allocating a day in a week for agitation, it's called Friday for the Future. They keep asking the politicians troubling questions like, who gave you the right to pawn our future? Who gave you the right to spoil our future? nature, basically means. I mean, if you keep on polluting your earth, you may go in about 10, 15 years, you may all die, but we, the living, what are we going to do? This anger is driving them to agitate, to do some kind of demonstrations, and it may also boil down into voting very soon. Green parties, the parties which are pushing for pro-nature policy changes, they are gaining significance. But unfortunately, that kind of movement hasn't happened in India yet. And I hope this election, it brings a change, or it actually marks the beginning. And I really wish to see, new parties or existing parties focusing on nature and putting that as their biggest promise to the future generation, so they could do really something meaningful. To add to your understanding, to our understanding, I would like to share another happening, which is from Switzerland, where a group of 2,000 to 3,000 elderly women, they took the local government to court. The local government, in the sense, the federal Swiss government, they took their own government to court, accusing them of screwing up the climate, which is causing a lot of health issues for the elderly people. The case was debated in Belgium in a European court, and a verdict actually came last week, favoring these 2,000 to 3,000 elderly women and penalizing the Swiss government to do something immediately to mitigate the climate action. The trouble is, in one country, if a group of activists, they win, and if they force their government to redraw the policies to do something good for nature, but what happens to all the burning which is happening in all of the countries, industrial pollution, which is causing global warming? So it has to be a collective effort. This kind of court case and the verdict, it may cause a ripple effect, and soon India also will join. Because only this week, only the last couple of days, we have seen the biggest warning given by Mother Nature through the enormous rain deposits in the deserts of Middle East Asia, Gulf nations, particularly UAE, United Arab Emirates, and Dubai, which are reeling underwater. These two nations are basically built on deserts, and they have no drainage systems because they didn't have a need till now to drain the excess water, because it rains so sporadically, so seldom, and only very less rain in those places. But in a span of 3 days, rain which would normally happen over a 2.5-year period, it came down heavily on those two countries. 2.5 years of rain falling just in a span of 48 hours. We see a lot of horrific images, a lot of cars floating in the highways, and basically you have floods running through the first floor height in many streets, and it's like a giant lake or even a big ocean. This is a clear and present warning given by Mother Nature that the global warming phenomenon is really real, and we guys can't ignore it, because we are going to suffer big time. And elections, they give us the possibility to do something about this, and I have exercised my voting right today. I have actually voted to somebody whom I think would do something good for Mother Nature. I'm sure you'll be able to identify such candidates in your locality also. They don't have to be from an established political party. They could even be an independent candidate. Our voice must be heard, and if it is heard, it will be noted. It will bring in a change. Jai Hind. My dear friends, I request you again to exercise your vote without fail, and I wish we can all collectively bring in a good change, a change that we desire to our country, to our earth, because we have only one, right? Only one country and only one earth to live. We all live under the same sky, regardless of our skin color, our religious beliefs, our food habits, our dressing habits, our economic status, and so on and so forth, right? So thank you so much for listening to this podcast patiently. I'm RJ Babuji Janagarajan, signing off from this week's The Great Indian Monologue. I wish you all a happy time ahead, a healthy and cool time ahead. Please stay in the shade and hydrate enough. And when you go to the polling booth, please carry an umbrella. And if you see an elderly person who's in the queue to cast the vote, please make room for them. Please allow them to go as a priority voter and cast the vote, because we must really appreciate their belief in our voting system, even at their age. I have seen a few really elderly people who couldn't even walk properly, who needed assistance, casting their vote today, which gave me a huge boost in my belief and in my faith in our democracy. Long live our democracy. Jai Hind once again. Stay blessed. Stay tuned for the next episode. Bye-bye.